Welcome to Modern Crime Scope, the home of real, shocking, and gripping true crime stories. We uncover chilling mysteries, disturbing cases, and jaw-dropping investigations from around the world. Subscribe and dive into the dark side of human nature with every video. Michael Harris seemed like an ordinary son, living quietly with his mother, Linda, in their suburban home. But when police entered the house, they uncovered a nightmare. Linda's rotting corpse hidden inside, and Michael calmly carrying on life as if nothing had happened. What investigators revealed next would shock the entire community. In a quiet suburb, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The streets were lined with small houses, each one well-kept and orderly. Lawns were mowed, fences painted, and neighbors exchanged polite greetings as they walked their dogs or checked their mail. On the surface, everything seemed normal, almost idyllic. But inside one particular house at the end of the block, darkness lingered, hidden behind the outwardly calm walls. The home belonged to a mother and her adult son, and for months, the house appeared as though nothing had changed. The curtains were drawn, the garden pruned, and from the outside it looked like life carried on as usual. Yet the mother had not been seen for weeks, and the quiet streets began to hold whispers of unease. The son maintained a façade of normalcy that fooled even the closest neighbors. He left the house daily, went shopping, took out the trash, and performed all the routines expected of a responsible adult. Some neighbors even admired his quiet efficiency, never suspecting the sinister truth behind his calm demeanor. There were small signs that something was off, though most people dismissed them. Mail piled up in the mailbox, sometimes spilling onto the driveway. Occasionally, a strange odor drifted from the house, faint enough that it could be mistaken for garbage or forgotten food. Lights flickered at odd hours, and the occasional sound of movement in the house at night hinted that someone or something was inside. Despite these subtle warnings, few dared to ask questions. The mother had always been a private woman, and the son was equally reserved. People told themselves she was busy, perhaps visiting relatives or traveling. They assumed that if something serious had happened, someone would have said something. Even friends who tried to reach her received no replies, and gradually they stopped calling. Weeks passed without contact, and the house remained unchanged. From the outside, it looked like a home frozen in time, a snapshot of everyday life that concealed a creeping horror. Inside the house, the atmosphere was suffocating and strange. The son moved from room to room with deliberate care, going about daily tasks with mechanical precision. He cooked meals, washed dishes, and maintained an orderly environment, all while hiding a secret that no one could imagine. Every step he took was calculated to preserve the illusion of normalcy. He spoke to neighbors through the window when needed, made brief appearances outside, and left groceries neatly stacked on the counter, giving the impression that life continued as usual. But beneath the surface, the house held a chilling reality. Behind closed doors, in a room that no one entered, the mother's absence was not a simple disappearance. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would soon unravel, shocking the quiet community and leaving a trail of questions that no one could ignore. The tension in the house was invisible, but palpable, like a shadow stretched across every corner. The facade of ordinary life masked the extraordinary darkness lurking inside, and in that quiet, suburban neighborhood, where the mundane and the horrific coexisted side by side, the stage was being set for a discovery that would horrify everyone who ever believed in the safety of appearances. As the days turned into weeks, the quiet neighborhood began to notice that something was not right. The mother, who had always been a familiar presence, was nowhere to be seen. Mail continued to accumulate in the mailbox, newspapers piled up on the porch, and neighbors started to exchange uneasy glances. People whispered about her absence, wondering why she had not been answering phone calls or replying to messages. Concern grew, but no one acted immediately. After all, she had always been private and independent, so many assumed she might simply be taking a break from social interaction. Still, the uneasy feeling lingered like a cloud that refused to dissipate. Finally, a friend, unable to reach her for over a month, contacted the local authorities to request a welfare check. Police officers arrived at the modest house in the middle of the afternoon, expecting a routine visit. The neighborhood watched from a distance as the officers approached the front door. The son answered immediately, calm and composed, offering a rehearsed explanation. She was resting, he said, and there was nothing to worry about. He moved smoothly, directing the officers around the house, allowing them to glance at the neat, orderly rooms. From the outside, he seemed cooperative, almost concerned, but the officers couldn't shake the growing feeling that something was off. The house itself seemed ordinary at first. Furniture was in place, kitchen counters were clean, and the living room appeared untouched. Yet the air was different, stale, thick, and heavy. A faint, pungent odor drifted from the back of the house, barely noticeable but present enough to unsettle the officers. There was a strange buzzing sound, almost like a persistent insect, but no insects were visible. As they moved through the hallway, each step seemed to echo unnaturally, filling the space with a sense of unease. It was as if the house itself was hiding a secret, waiting for someone to uncover it. The son remained close, watching their movements with careful interest, answering questions politely but avoiding eye contact. Something about his behavior suggested more than nervousness. It hinted at someone who had rehearsed this moment countless times, someone who was determined to protect what lay behind the closed doors. The officers could feel the tension building, a silent warning that the situation was far from ordinary. When they reached the back of the house, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating. The smell intensified, mixing with the faint buzz, creating a sense of dread that made the officers instinctively pause. They exchanged glances, knowing that their instincts were rarely wrong. Something terrible had occurred here. The son's calm demeanor now seemed rehearsed, almost robotic, as if he were standing guard over a secret too horrifying to imagine. Every detail, from the locked cabinets to the strategically placed furniture, seemed designed to hide the truth. The stage was set for a shocking discovery. The neighborhood's quiet rhythm had masked a darkness that was about to be exposed, and the officers were the first to sense the horror lurking behind the ordinary walls. In the days to come, the small house would reveal a truth so disturbing that it would shatter the illusion of safety and normalcy in a community that had always believed evil could not hide in plain sight. The officers' instincts had been correct. Behind a closed door at the back of the house lay a scene of unimaginable horror. The mother's lifeless body had been hidden from view for weeks, her features distorted by decay. The sight was shocking not only for its gruesomeness, but also for the chilling realization that the son had been living in the same house with her rotting corpse. Meals had been eaten, television watched, and sleep taken in rooms mere feet away from death itself. The boundary between life and death had been blurred, and the quiet suburban home had become a place of unimaginable terror. The initial examination revealed that her death was not natural. There were signs of trauma, small but significant, that pointed toward foul play. The officers stepped carefully, as if the air itself carried a warning. Each corner of the room seemed to hold a story of neglect and concealment, a testament to the son's careful efforts to maintain an illusion of normalcy while hiding the truth. The house was silent except for the faint buzz that seemed to echo off the walls, a grim reminder that the horror had been quietly ongoing for weeks. Every object in the room told a story. Personal belongings were left untouched. Photographs remained on the shelves, and furniture showed no sign of struggle. It was as if the house itself was a stage carefully arranged for a performance meant to deceive anyone who entered. Yet the smell and the sight betrayed the reality. The officers realized that living with a corpse required a level of detachment most people could not imagine. The son's ability to maintain routines, shop for groceries, and interact with neighbors while hiding such a secret was terrifying in its cold calculation. Evidence collected from the room suggested the body had been there for at least several weeks. In that time, the son had gone about his life as though nothing had happened, leaving neighbors unsuspecting. Officers noted the meticulous cleaning of certain areas, the way garbage had been disposed of, and the careful avoidance of anything that might hint at the decay. Everything was calculated, yet the smell and eventual discovery made it impossible to hide. The contrast between life in the house and the presence of death was surreal. The realization that someone could coexist with a decaying family member without revealing it to anyone was almost beyond comprehension. Officers documented every detail, photographing the scene, collecting forensic evidence, and taking careful notes of the air, the layout, and the placement of objects. The mother's absence had been noticed too late, and the son's careful planning had kept the horror hidden until this moment. The case would not only shock the neighborhood, but also challenge the understanding of human behavior and the extremes of psychological detachment. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this was not an impulsive act, but a deliberate and calculated crime. The son's life in the house, seemingly ordinary to the outside world, had been a careful mask for something monstrous. The officers left the room with a heavy sense of unease, knowing the discovery would mark the beginning of one of the most disturbing cases they had ever encountered. The quiet house at the end of the street had revealed its darkest secret, and nothing in that peaceful neighborhood would ever feel the same again. Once the son was taken into custody, the investigation quickly turned into a painstaking examination of his life, his routines, and his mind. Detectives began piecing together events leading up to the discovery of the mother's body, trying to understand how someone could live in such close proximity to death without raising suspicion. Interviews, surveillance, and digital records began to reveal a chilling portrait of a man who had meticulously constructed a double life. His public persona was calm and obedient, almost mundane, but behind closed doors the darkness was overwhelming. Neighbors described small, unsettling behaviors that, in retrospect, now seemed like clues. Strange noises at odd hours, flickering lights, and an occasional unusual smell all made sense in the context of the crime. Some recalled glimpses of him through windows, performing tasks that seemed odd, moving furniture late at night, or carrying items in and out of the house for no apparent reason. No one could have imagined that these ordinary, almost trivial moments masked a horrifying secret. The officers began to see a pattern. The son had carefully curated what the outside world could perceive, while hiding the truth just out of reach of human curiosity. Investigators found journals, notes, and recordings that outlined his thoughts and intentions. The writings revealed an obsession with control, an unsettling fascination with death, and a deliberate strategy to avoid detection. Each page told the story of someone detached from reality, yet fully aware of the consequences of his actions. The digital trail, emails, search histories, and social media activity, revealed a careful planning process. He had searched for methods to conceal a crime, ways to mask odors, and techniques to maintain a facade of normalcy. The more investigators uncovered, the more they realized the depth of his calculation. Forensic evidence corroborated this disturbing narrative. The timeline of events matched the son's movements and interactions with neighbors, painting a picture of someone methodical and deliberate. Small details, like the order in which rooms were cleaned, garbage disposed of, and the body positioned, showed a mind obsessively focused on control. Each element of the house was designed to maintain the illusion that everything was ordinary, to prevent anyone from suspecting the truth. Detectives noted that this level of planning and emotional detachment was rare, and it suggested a psychological profile more complex and disturbing than typical criminal behavior. As the investigation continued, the community learned more about the son's past. There were reports of previous erratic behavior, isolation, and troubling interactions with family members. Friends and distant relatives expressed shock, struggling to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the actions that had been uncovered. The case became a study in how appearances could be deceiving and how evil could quietly exist behind the walls of an ordinary home. Every discovery added layers to the horror, showing not just a crime of passion or impulse, but a deliberate orchestration of life and death, deception, and control. By the end of the investigation, the police had amassed a mountain of evidence that would form the backbone of the prosecution. It was clear that the son had lived in the house with the corpse not out of ignorance or temporary insanity, but through deliberate choice, masking reality from the world. The once quiet neighborhood would never forget the revelations, and the house at the end of the street would remain a chilling symbol of how darkness can hide in plain sight, waiting patiently until the truth finally emerges. The trial became the focus of the entire community, drawing attention from far beyond the quiet suburb where the crime had unfolded. Reporters gathered outside the courthouse, eager to capture every development. For the neighbors and friends who once believed the son to be quiet and harmless, the courtroom became the place where their disbelief slowly turned into grim acceptance. As the prosecution laid out their evidence, the story of the hidden corpse and the calculated deception emerged with a clarity that was both shocking and undeniable. The jury listened as forensic experts described the condition of the mother's body, the signs of trauma, and the unmistakable evidence that pointed to intentional harm. The timeline presented by investigators was chilling in its precision. Each week that passed while the body remained inside the house became proof of the son's cold detachment from reality. Digital records revealed searches for how to disguise the smell of decomposition and how to explain a sudden disappearance without raising suspicion. The prosecutors emphasized that these were not the actions of someone overcome by grief or mental collapse, but of someone who planned and concealed, calculating each step with eerie calm. The defense attempted to argue that the son had been suffering from severe psychological issues. They suggested that his detachment and the decision to live with his mother's decaying body were signs of a fractured mind unable to distinguish between right and wrong. But the evidence worked against them. Journals and notes found in the home showed a disturbing awareness of what had been done, paired with an obsession with keeping the secret hidden. Witnesses described him shopping for groceries, chatting with neighbors, and going through daily routines while knowing what lay behind the bedroom door. His ability to maintain this facade convinced the jury that he was not unaware of his actions, but chillingly in control. The testimonies were haunting. Neighbors spoke of their guilt, recalling the small signs they had overlooked, the smell, the silence, the unanswered questions. Friends of the mother wept as they explained how her absence had been brushed aside as a personal choice when, in reality, she had been gone for weeks. The courtroom atmosphere was heavy with grief, anger, and disbelief. The image of the quiet, suburban son who once blended so easily into the background of everyday life was replaced by the figure of a cold manipulator who had treated life and death with terrifying indifference. When the verdict was read, silence gripped the courtroom. Guilty of murder. The son was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The weight of the decision hung in the air, both as justice for the victim and as a chilling reminder of what had been hidden in plain sight for so long. Outside, reporters delivered breaking news updates, while the neighborhood, once defined by its peaceful streets and modest homes, became known for the horrifying crime that shattered its calm. The house itself stood as a silent witness, its walls carrying the memory of what had been concealed inside. For the community, it became a place to avoid, a reminder that evil does not always appear in obvious ways. Behind the most ordinary of doors, darkness had festered, disguised by routine and silence.